Hello and welcome to a new video. We're going to dive into a new series here together. Let me first set some context and explain a few things. First off, if you've been a subscriber for a long time to the channel, thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. We've gone through many changes here together, from a cryptocurrency channel to talking more about finance, now in this kind of gray area, lost area, where there's barely any uploads happening. So you got to understand is that it's so exhausting, the current climate that we're in. Economics, weightlifting, walking down the street, everything has been politicized, right? And so it makes it very hard to talk about what used to be simple things, okay? Because now things aren't so simple. Everything seems so complicated, right? And the goal of this new series of videos is going to be to hopefully distill down some of this complication into simplicity again, and really help us all understand things better. Understand that a guy like me, when I think about how I want to best use my time, and I look at, okay, I could spend my time, making these videos and having these conversations with people, and then we're going to hit these, during these conversations, we're going to hit these like roadblocks. And sometimes they'll be just like a little speed bump, and sometimes they will be what seems like a wall, a brick wall. And we could start talking about something so innocent, non-political. Very quickly it will become political. And then it becomes an argument of facts, but without websites and screenshots and links. Like when I'm talking to somebody face to face, it's none of that is really possible. It's not like I got all that stuff like in my phone geared up, ready to go, like, and here's this piece for proof, and here's this piece, right? And we're in a very interesting place right now with information and facts, right? There's so many fact checkers checking the fact checkers, but only on the right, not on the left, of course. And so things are now more difficult to talk about because what we're really dealing with is people who are choosing to get a ton of information and education and people who aren't. And that's the biggest divider. But then even within the education and the I think I got it all figured out and I think I know it and I'm going to create this opinion and belief and view around what I know, we've got filtering that can still occur. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about all of these things and how they fit into the macro. And so we're going to start out, I want to present you with a big idea here. And it's going to upset a lot of the MAGA followers and the QAnon followers. And it might upset the left if you're a leftist. So who cares what you are? We can all come together and watch these videos, and hopefully you can learn something from them. But the big idea here is that there is no left and right. It is all the same. It is all one group. Now, I don't know if this is just a beautiful amount of coincidences or if this is all done on purpose. But that is what we're going to explore together. And we're going to come at this from many different ways. And so I disappear for a while because I get into these moods and these attitudes where I couldn't be fucked trying to explain to somebody, and then we're doing so well, and then we come into this roadblock of just there's so much there that they just can't let it go, right? And a lot of this has to do with your own traumas and your own dramas and your own emotional shit that's happened to you, okay? You have to understand, we've all got mommy and daddy issues. We've all got emotional things that have happened to us in the past. Well, what most people don't realize is that dictates and holds you hostage to accepting new ideas. There is a critical factor in the brain. It is an actual area in the brain where information cannot physically go past if it's triggering something emotional. Logic cannot bypass emotion. Okay? And as soon as emotion gets triggered and stirred up, it's very hard to think logically. We've all had experience of this. So that's what makes these conversations so hard. And so I just, a guy like me, I just sit back and I'm like, okay, well, I'll just go do my own thing. Because I'm not going to waste my time trying to bring somebody all the way through these conclusions, which you got to understand, like at this point with how much noise and how much drama is out there and complication, this is terabytes of data, guys. This will take us years to talk about. So what would be our best use of time together, you and me here in this video? Would it be us dissecting all the pieces? No, there's a million other channels for that. Did Trump actually say this? Does he hate the military and the Marines, or does he not? Does he like Latinos and Asian Americans? Does he not? Does he like the gays and the this and the that's, or does he not? That's not what I think our best use of time is. And I think that is another tripping piece and another roadblock that is stopping people from seeing the bigger picture. So what I want to talk about, because I love macro, I love the big picture. Let's talk about the big picture. So that's why I just wanted to give you some context. That's why a guy like me kind of disappears and then comes back, is because I'm thinking of, from my strong suits, and what I love to do, which is talk about these things. How can I best serve you? How can I add the most value, right? And so a lot of times it takes a long time to figure that out. And you need breaks and you need time to go away and kind of figure things out and come back. So hopefully this will be of value to you, as I've said a few times here. And this would be the first time I'm kind of talking through this piece of it. And as we go along, I'm sure I'll get better at talking through it. But sit back, relax, grab something to drink, grab a little bite to eat, and let's talk through this. Let's start off with a corollary and and connecting the dots here, starting with pyramids. There's so many things on this planet that's a pyramid. Not only do we have the beautiful the pyramids of Giza in front of you, which is a magnificent feat of humanity or aliens or whoever made it, right? Absolutely beautiful, yeah? And we've got our food pyramid, which is laughable to anyone in fitness and anyone who's spent enough time understanding that the stuff that is in the bottom is absolute crap, but it's where most people eat, and this is where most people's understanding of the topic stops, believe it or not. You could say this whole chart, but I would argue right here. I like the taste of these foods, I'm going to eat these foods. These are the things as a kid I didn't like, even though they're way more colorful and they're way more fun and they got all kinds of interesting flavors and reactions in my mouth. I don't like these things, right? I don't like broccoli because my mom made me eat it as a kid. So even here, we start to get into already what the main topic is going to be, which is that we are held back simply by stuff that's happened in the past, which blocks us from seeing very simple things and which should be very obvious things happening right in front of us. And we've got our, milk and dairy group, and we've got our meat group and our oils and right? Very few people take it to the top of the understanding of the oils, okay? And we've also got our CEO, our company, typical company structure. Here is a look at General Motors, okay? And I'm just showing you this to show that it is once again a glorified pyramid where we've got one guy at the top and he is dictating over everybody else. And in this case, it's not. It's a board of directors. Shareholders and stockholders really didn't have much say unless they were a majority holder. And in a lot of cases, they were also on the board, okay? Unless there was conflict clause, in which case that didn't exist. But for the most part, there is the CEO at the top, or the president right here. And all the way down here, there's a guy who is sweeping the floors, right? And that is our hierarchy structure. And you can get to the top. And we're all taught in America that you can get to the top of this structure if you just work hard and you dedicate yourself and you stay focused. And this is 100% true. We call that the American dream, even though that is under siege right now. You and I both know that on a non-emotional day that there isn't really a lot of other countries like America with the opportunities that we've got. So let's talk about this. Let's get rid of that. We're going to talk about a pyramid, but we're going to talk about it inverted. And where I want to start with this whole conversation is there's a big issue going on right now that I see. And what it is where are we getting information? How are we getting information? And what is acceptable for us? How are we basing our decisions? And unfortunately, the enemy, let's call them, which is you can call them the mainstream media, the George Soros, the Chi-Coms, if you listen to Alex Jones, whoever is your flavor. Where we get our media is... let's just call it Fox, CNN, MSNBC, who else is there? ABC, and then we've got, Facebook, we've got socials, Twitter, and YouTube, okay? And this, believe it or not, is been a huge benefit to a lot of people, is because there used to not be this internet piece, and now there is. And so, let's move him over here. So this is where most people get their information. But sadly, it's not even this deep. We could actually go even more granular and just say that, well, depending on your age demographic, boomers are logging into their Facebook account and they're just perusing headlines. And so as they're scrolling through their feed and they see maybe Occupy Democracy stuff popping up in their feed, or they're seeing pro-Republican stuff or GOP stuff, they're making decisions and opinions based on headlines. Obviously, that's been a well-known fact considering what we've got, this whole dilemma of clickbait headlines, news stories that are now just being fabricated, and somebody familiar with the source and somebody who is familiar with the familiar source that was familiar with the source at one point is now all credible sources. When it used to be, fucking John down the street said this guy was this, and so bang, that was the story, right? And that has been eroded away to somebody, what do they say? They say somebody familiar with the matter. I don't even know what that means, to be honest with you. And I'm sure you've seen that as well. So we've got this base layer of where people get their information, okay? And I know that some people, it's like the left watches CNN and MSNBC and Rachel Maddow and the 3 years of Russia conspiracy, and, the right tends to watch more of the Fox News, which is talking about Obamagate and, Trump, and you're even getting into some of the QAnon stuff and the MAGA stuff, which is, that they're trying to bring down this deep state, and there's this ring of people who like to touch little kids, and they're going to take that down, and he's going to save the world and save the planet, okay? And I would say the polarities of both are equally as destructive, okay? The polarities of the left are just as equally as destructive as the polarities on the right. I mean, Antifa versus we're trying to save the world from this deep state and George Soros and, all those pieces, right? It's very far out, and it's very hard to connect with somebody and, like Joe, your neighbor, who doesn't watch any of this and doesn't look at any of this, how are you going to explain all this to him? You don't, and you lose them. So most people get lost here, just like most people get lost in the bread and the carbohydrate area of the food pyramid. And most people at your job don't get higher than the mailroom, or maybe a manager, or maybe a fucking sales guy on the sales floor, right? So it's interesting how there's corollaries in these pyramids, but they're really just facts of life, right? So not a lot of people make it to the CEO, to become the CEO. Very few, actually, less than 1%, I would assume. It's something like that, right? And so we've got the same thing going on here. And then let's just say we've got, you graduate and you get to Zero Hedge, and you get to Federalist, and you get to, let's say, other YouTubers like Money GPS is a guy who's always talking like this, and Silver Bullion, I think, is another one. All these guys, right? And these are now maybe personalities, or let's call them websites or something like that. And after you've kind of graduated through this, you find your way to these sites, okay? And I guess we could go we could stay here or go deeper. It just depends on how many levels we want to make here. And this layer is to where it's kind of like you realize, or you think, that everything's a scam. That's the best way I can describe this, because all these people, all day long, all they talk about is how money's a scam, the stock market's a scam, it's going up, but valuations are way too high, and earnings are down, and fundamentals are completely disconnected, and there's $24 trillion in debt in America, a deficit, and the Fed owns 1/3 of all mortgages, and so it's everything is bad. Every day everything is bad, and I don't know how people can subscribe to this, because you must be miserable deep inside. And so this is where we start to kind of conflate once again. Jay, you don't understand. I need the information. I need to know what's going on, and we conflate that with filling our heads with a bunch of crap. Some of it's good and most of it's bad, because we're absorbing the cynicism. We're absorbing the shitty patterns that they've got, and their boundaries and their beliefs and their worldviews, and we're absorbing that, and we're taking it on, and next thing you know, we're talking just like these guys and these people. So even here, even though there's a lot of people that probably graduate from this level to this level, is even here there is we start to see even more division and separation. And let's just make this really, really simple. Is we're going to add in on this level Alex. Let's add in Alex Jones. And we're going to add in QAnon as well, okay? Because these are all phenomenons, and they're all movements, and I don't really care if you like them or believe them or whatever. It doesn't matter. Bear with me through the conversation here. So what I listed out first, those are kind of all just extremely pessimistic, no real optimism. Buy gold. The dollar's going to collapse. Stock market's going to collapse. They're, buy gold, but also to kind of maybe they might come and confiscate it, and so then you should get guns, and then that leads you down the rabbit hole of preppers, and you should build a bunker underneath your house, and you should have a bug out bag, and you should know how to use your rifle, and oh my gosh, right? So then we can just get lost on that side. But there's also another side of this, which is like Alex Jones and everything is the Chi-Coms. That's my Alex Jones impression, by the way. It's awful, I know. Everything is the Chi-Coms, and you've got what he's kind of pushing, and he's kind of pushing a lot of the same things, but I don't know if they're going to be featuring him on Zero Hedge, but we're going to put them in here with this, okay? We're going to put in here AJ. Oops. Okay, can't edit it. Oh well. But then you get into this level, and again, a lot of people, just like a lot of people are comfortable with tuning in Fox at night, and this is where they're getting their news, and Jay, you don't understand, Trump is the worst person, CNN, it's Russiagate, whatever, right? Every single network kind of has its own theme, but if there was a general theme at the base layer here, it's that social media sites, Google, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, censors voices they don't like, and those voices also have, a lot of them happen to be against a lot of the leftist ideas. And then Fox, I guess, is the closest thing to the right, but then you've got Zero Hedge and all them. I guess you could consider them all right as well. But then you get, so just like there's a lot of people comfortable here, a lot of people get comfortable here. And a lot of the, Alex Jones followers and the Zero Hedge followers, they feel special, right? They feel like they're getting in tune to this specific, special information, that they've got information and knowledge that nobody else has. And it turns into this, you don't understand. I've got sources, I know people. This is what I'm hearing, right? And you especially see that with QAnon. You especially see that with Alex Jones type followers, right? But you see it with Zero Hedge and, Federalist and whatever, maybe Epoch Times we could throw in here. I'm not very familiar with that site. But then you get down to like this next level, okay? Where's my, oh, that's why, because I was doing a text tool. Then you get down to this next level, and it's like the debunkers of the debunking. And we're just going to leave them at debunkers, because I don't know what else to call them, okay? And that is, that's like your no more news. That's your people that are starting to footprint and connect the dots. And this is a lot of the better, let's call them gold and silver channels, is that they're starting to say, well, okay, wait a second. Like, yeah, all this debt and housing and people can't eat and all these things are going on. But there's also these deeper layers going on. And so No More News is a channel that basically, and he's kind of stuck in his ways too, he's kind of stuck in his beliefs, is because he's creating a whole identity around it now, is he's connecting like, well, no, there's not really a right and a left. There's like this pro-Israel going on and then this anti-Israel. So it's Team Israel versus Team Muslim Brotherhood. And I tend to agree with a lot of what's being said there. The United States, and especially this presidency, has a lot of interest in Israel, has a lot of interest in other countries taking it serious, recognizing it as its own country, moving over different peace treaties and different things to Israel to make it legitimate, right? And I find that very interesting. And then you can dive into ancestry and where a lot of those people came from, Israel, and a lot of the people on these boards, and you look at BlackRock and you look at a lot of the pharmaceutical companies that are getting the contracts, and there's all these deeper layers that are going on, right? And that's for a very small amount of people. They want that level of information. They want to go in the deep, off the deep end into the rabbit hole, right? You've got obviously a smaller group of people who are looking at that level, okay? And you've got people who, once again, are falling for, this is it, I've hit the bottom, I've researched this thing to the depth, front, back, side to side, I've got all the information now. And it doesn't really stop you from thinking that there's more information or that there's more answers out there. Because at that level, it's like the answers of, maybe it's not just George Soros who's funding the riots, who's funding the arsony or whatever, right? Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe there's somebody else going on. And so I find that, the deeper you go into the rabbit hole, it really just makes you more hungry for more. And so you think you're at the very bottom, you think you found the absolute pinnacle of truth at debunkers, but then you start opening your mind to other varieties within, let's call it the debunkers. And we could add this as another layer if we wanted to, which is starting to talk about like the truths of this planet. Is it round? Is it flat? Is there one sun, multiple suns? What is the deal with the time zones? Why do we have time zones? Why does the sun come up and go down? All these things starting to really challenge the status quo and really just what we've been taught. Like, is history what they say it is, or what actually happened there? Because a lot of times we find and I think it's fun to ask questions, by the way. That's why I like talking about stuff like this. I think it's fun to explore with each other. I think it's fun to try and put together thesis and theories and ideas and test them out. Back test them just like you would in a trading scenario, right? Trading a chart. And I like doing this. And I think that this leads to a healthy brain, first and foremost. So if it did nothing else and it was all bullshit and everything is the truth that they taught us in the books, right? I'm okay with that. If that ends up being how it is, I'm okay with that. I like exploring these different things because it stimulates my brain. And I like that. And it makes me feel young, and it makes me feel alive, and it makes me feel curious. And that curiosity creates creativity in me, which allows me to do cool shit. And so again, hopefully you're 20 minutes into the video, you're kind of feeling the same way, you know? And so yeah, at the debunker stage, we can start to get into those things, mud floods and how many civilizations were here before, how many times this planet might have been reset, what's the moon, you know, a lot of different things. And so the surface level gatekeepers, and I would say overall there is a surface level gatekeeper to almost all these areas now. There's a surface level gatekeeper to everything. The gatekeepers are pretty much like, you know, Ancient Aliens TV show. And a lot of those people is because they're giving you some of the information, and maybe they don't know anymore, maybe they do, and they're pushing that out like, no, that is the deal. That's the whole story. And so again, you know, if you know, John or Susie even dip their toe into that area, then they think they're being fulfilled and they think they're getting the whole story. But for hopefully a lot of you on this channel, we know that there's always more. And I know that I'm missing things on this list and what we're talking about in this big chunk of topic point we're talking about. There is a lot of other granular pieces we could get lost in, right? And overall, if we were to zoom out for a second, that's what's happening with the American public, is we're getting so caught up in like, no, Trump said it like this. What did he mean when he said I wanted to downplay it? Like, right? And we're sitting here arguing for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks about his fucking tonality and his body language. And it's like nobody. First of all, I'm a firm believer that like yes is yes, no is no. So if you're going to do that to me, do it to everyone else. And if that's going to be the behavior that we mutually agree on, that we're going to go this deep with an analysis, then everyone gets that same level of analysis, right? So everyone gets treated equal with this craziness, whether it's like, okay, cool, he said everything's fine, so everything's fine, or no, his body language turned to the left and that meant he's lying. Everyone gets the same level. So it's not that Nancy Pelosi can get away with not wearing a mask and go and get her fucking hair done, and then try and, you know, tear down the salon, but Trump's body language said that he's lying. It's what? We can't do it like this. It has to be a level playing field. And so, yeah, it's the game like that is created to distract. So let's get back now and let's come to this bigger topic that I want to talk about and start exploring over these videos to come. And this is really the direction that I want to go with at least this series. I don't know what I'm going to name this yet, but this is really fascinating to me. Is that what if they're all on the same side? And that's how I look at this, is it's either Occam's razor and it really is this simple and it's good guys, bad guys, cowboys and Indians, and lobbyists have come in and China's come in and all these other countries and influences come in and paid a shitload of money to not just the Democrats but Republicans and GOP members, and there's a ton of corruption going on, and Trump really doesn't represent a party and he is the hero and God sent him and he's going to save us all. It could be that simple. And it also could be that that's another layer of the story of a much grander history, and that's far more interesting to me to explore, because I don't think that any topic is ever closed. I don't think that any anything is ever shut out and done, right? And science proves this. There's not a single scientific category or area of exploration that's been like, okay, dust our hands of this, we're done, we can close this out, and we have learned everything we can about this thing over here. They've tried it, but they've had to reopen these areas of study. It had something to do with the eyes. That's the only one in the history of science that they tried to like close out, was like the ocular study or something like that. I don't know what they call that, the technical term for it, but anyways. So there is another way or another possibility here that this might be. And it might be that it's not Occam's razor in that super basic sense, that it is that they're all on the same team and that they're pretending to be opposites. They're pretending to not like each other. Or maybe at this layer of the game, they really do not like each other, but there's another layer above that, just like the pyramid. And this guy down here, or up at the top, however you want to look at the pyramid, we still don't even know exists. Okay? We don't even know it's there. We don't know who it is, what it is, where it's from, what its intentions are, but there's this mystery thing. And I think that to a degree, this stimulates all of our sense of wonder. Like, we always want to believe that there's something more to the story. And I think it's in human nature to be kind of not conspiratorial to a degree, but just curious. And that curiosity sometimes gets blown out to the ridiculous and umph degree. So again, I'm just putting this out there. Okay, so let's talk about this. There's a lot of coincidences that have happened, and this COVID stuff has really got me thinking. And I've shot a few videos, and I tried to kind of interject myself in these different conversations, and I just realized that that's not really where I want to be in the conversation. So I did a couple live streams and a couple videos on this channel, and I just realized that's not me. I'm not going to get into mud, talk about BLM, talk about whose lives matter the most. I'm not fucking doing that. because let's step back and look at the bigger picture here on what's going on. And we could do this. Let's have a little fun with this. Let's make a list. So what are things that are talking about and that are big right now? We've got the Confufu, which we could dig into. Here's where we could take a sidetrack and we could get all lost talking about the patents that exist from the early 2000s. We could talk about the Bill Gates connections. We could talk about his work in Africa and how the polio vaccination has actually led to more polio vaccination has actually led to more polio cases. We could talk about how in Vietnam there was no autism until the vaccinations came in. We could talk about how there's 70 vaccinations that now, 72 that have to be taken, I believe it is, by an infant in the United States just to be able to go to school. We could talk about all of that and how that all fits into this really curious timeline of 2020. Somebody eats a bat in China and gets from a wet market and gets this mystery flu that is corona. Coronavirus is SARS virus. It is a flu virus, okay? It is a descriptor. Coronavirus is a broad term. And we've named this one COVID-19, okay? 2019. We could start to get into Masonic connections here with the CO-19, okay? What else we got? We got BLM, which coincidentally, from a Google Trends standpoint, gets popular every 4 years right before an election. Go ahead and go to google.com/trends or trends.google.com, I believe. And no, the first one. And you can just search BLM and you'll see that there's a 4 years, there's a spike in search terms right before the 2016 election now. So we could talk about BLM. What else do we got going on right now? We got lockdowns going on. We got masks going on. We got just general health. Okay, we've got rights and freedoms being taken away. We could talk about New Zealand and the crazy stuff they're doing over there, where they're requiring you to do a 14-day quarantine. And if you don't keep getting the tests at the frequency that they want you to get the tests, you're just never going to leave. And Jacinda laughed about that in a video. All these little tidbits. I could spend all day long cruising Twitter and finding all these links. I really don't care. If your stopping point with this thread that we're exploring together is going to be, well, show me all this, I think Jay's just making this up, then you know what? Then just leave, because you've missed the point. Lockdowns, BLM, we got riots now, and this is bringing up Antifa. And just look at all these topics that we can get completely lost in. Vaccines now, obviously. When are we going back to normal? There was the masks, the no masks. What did Fauci tell us, right? And then Fauci was downplaying it, and all the media was downplaying it in March, and Trump was downplaying it, but then it turned into a thing. So the blood's on their hands, and now it's us versus them, right? All these are just areas to get lost in. These are just topics to get lost in right now. And all of this is like the macro that leads to the micro that leads to the macro, is because what is all this now bringing up? It's bringing up a conversation of RFID chips. It's bringing up a conversation of your health and medical history being somehow associated to your passport, and your passport and the flow of people in and out of countries and jurisdictions being throttled. We're already seeing that. Okay, we're already seeing that right now. If you were to go to any country's CDC site or any country's, well, CDC is separate, but any country's travel site, then you'll see that every single one of them has current restrictions right now. Okay, and one of the most interesting ones is right here in front of you, Malaysia. This is just malaysia.travel/alert. And look what we've got here. We've got 23 countries that have been restricted against. Entry ban. So this is very real. This is happening right now. And of course, the United States is in there because you know what they're basing it out of? They're basing it on cases now. So whoever's got the best testing is actually being penalized. Citizens of countries with over 150,000 cases are barred. Look at that. Notice the text, the use of linguistics from entering Malaysia. And you know what's very interesting to me is that China's not on this list. China's never been on this list. China was actually never restricted from going in and out of Malaysia or any other Asian country for that matter. I know people in Indonesia, and China just opened up this week. Chinese people are able to come back, even tourists are able to come back into Indonesia. Yet nobody else can come into Indonesia. Nobody from Australia, nobody from New Zealand, nobody from Europe, nobody from America, nobody from South America can come into Indonesia yet. It's completely closed except to China. So it makes you wonder, where are we going with this? What are we doing with this, right? And that's the question everyone has been asking. and I'd like to explore, this is where we're going to explore this thread. So we just set up the whole context here, is that maybe they're all on the same team, because there's all these coincidences that have sped up the timeline. We've sped up the jump to digital currency. We've sped up the jump to restricting travel throughout the whole planet. We've restricted the jump to getting rid of dollars. We've restricted so much. We've made the jump. We've took a quantum leap here in 6 months that would have taken years. And it, to those of you who are maybe a little conspiratorial like me, I don't believe in coincidence. Outside of like we got the same pair of Converse on, or the same black shirt, or something that can mathematically be determined, the same birth date, the same name. Outside of that, I do not believe in coincidence. So when I start to see all these things just beautifully line up that happen to strip away our freedoms, happen to push us in this direction that would have taken a much longer time to go naturally, I start to have questions. And when so many threads that, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, was off the wall, bonkers, conspiratorial, like Jay's building a bunker in his basement again kind of stuff, now it's like everyone wants it. Look at how many people are lining up to get guns and get certified gun training from ex-special forces, ex-special op guys. I can tell you right now, because I know some of them, the line is out the door. They can't keep up with demand. You know how, like, look at all the how to build a bug out bag videos on YouTube. Okay, how to farm in your backyard, how to live off grid. Those videos didn't just all of a sudden get popular because everyone's like, oh, this is fine. This is okay. All right, so Hive Mind works in that way as well. So let's go back. Let's go back in time. I've mentioned this before, and let's talk about it again. This is a 2015 paper that was released by, I believe, the BIS or the IMF, which is going below the zero bound. And it was really an argument for them wanting to go into negative interest rates. And we've seen some countries experiment with this. We've seen Japan experiment with this the longest. We've seen some European countries explore this. And really, I think that was the precursor. I think that was the experimentation into the much larger thing that they've got planned. We've been talking about and know that central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are going to become a thing. I don't know if every country will have one, but there's definitely a lot of countries who are making them right now and creating them. It might even get as far as at a state level. They're trying to do this. At a state level, there's different rules and jurisdictions than at a nationwide level. You got to remember, just because you're from America, it is a big place, so it might start to get broken up in that way in terms of the ruling and the laws, okay? But let's look at this. So this was written in 2015. Yeah, there it is, October 2015. IMF working paper, there you go. All right, potential steps in transition from paper standard to electronic money. And this lays out what they want to do. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Announce technical feasibility of eliminating the zero lower bound. That's zero interest rates. So go negative interest rates. That's what that means. And we have enough proof of that. We have I've covered this. The San Francisco Fed talked about this, and they kind of went back and forth. Yes, they like it, and they try to use Japan as an example. And then it's pretty much Japan's disaster. So yeah, they kind of reneged on those comments. Ask banks and other financial firms to make contingency plans for negative interest rates. Okay, they've got that. Formally make money in central bank certified bank accounts legal tender. Announce the intent to introduce an electronic money system. You see, what we're missing here from 2015, I wish we all would have paid more attention, is that they've done all this already. They've announced that they're going to do it. Okay, it didn't just happen that in 2017, all the banks, JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Mark Cuban, everybody who's anybody who has influence, I put that in quotations, influence, talked about how they think Bitcoin is a scam. 2017, which coincidentally in 2017, this paper was also drafted, which we need to take a quick look at. Going beyond the hype, this was a BIS publication. I shared this with you before. And what we see in the very middle, cross-intersecting all this, is central bank digital currencies. Central bank digital currencies, retail and wholesale. Here's your gold and silver. Here's cryptocurrencies, DLT, distributed ledger technology. In 2017, so again, 2015, they told us what they were going to do. And it always goes like this. If I can give you, this is the biggest piece of advice I can give you in terms of how they seed consciousness and then do it later, is they do this on such a micro level and a macro level that I don't think people even realize this what's happening. But what they do is, they'll write all these stories and hit pieces on far right groups, all right? And they obviously they've not done it at all for far left groups, not in this election cycle anyways. But then they're going to go back on all those pieces and use those as reference point 6, 12 months, 24 months later, and they're going to say, see, we told you about it. We warned you about it before. And they do the same thing here. Here it is, hey, we told you we were going to do this. We've been trying to plan this, and we've been trying to do this since 2015. We told you this is what we were going to do. And so it really is. I don't know why they do this. Maybe this is some sort of intergalactic agreement that they have to tell you how they're going to fuck you before they're about to do it. But you notice is that 99.9% of the time, they tell you exactly how they're going to stick it to you. And they were telling us back in 2015. It's just none of us were listening. So here's why. I'm going to explain why this is all bad, but let's keep going. Okay, so I explained this. This is, they, of course, use the argument when it's convenient for them of, banking the unbanked, which a lot of that is, a large part of Malaysia is unbanked because they don't want to be. A large part of the Middle East is unbanked, and they use very old systems, okay? And they don't want to be banked. They don't want central banks. There's very few countries on the planet now that don't have central banking established. And every single central bank establishment over the last 20 or maybe even longer, 20 or 30 years, has been the direct result of war. So we go in, the United States goes in, raids them, blows up all their shit, and establishes what we call democracy and centralized banking. Coincidence, huh? So it's like there's a long timeline here being played, and I can't help but think everyone's in on it because this takes a lot of cross-thinking. It takes a lot of consensus, okay? And so here we go, telling us that we're going to go negative, okay, and we're going to go to a digital currency. Here's the scary thing about that is the value of the US dollar is already pretty low. And when they can just, it already kind of is like that, but think of how bad they are at it now and how much worse it could possibly get when you can just add zeros to a distributed ledger I was going to say distributed ledger technology. Imagine what they can just do. They can just add instantly, we're going to increase supply. And we see it. For those of you who are in cryptocurrency, you see it. All these stable coins. We'll talk about how they just printed this. Yep, okay, big announcement. We just printed $200 million. Nobody bats an eye. You will get that. So, and it'll all be run by the Fed, okay, because that is where the next thing comes in, which is this very interesting bill that was talked about and introduced earlier this year. And don't get it twisted. This has Senate and House support across the board. Okay, so again, Democrats, Republicans coming together. I thought they hate each other. What's going on here? They don't hate each other. They're playing the same game. Okay, and it goes into some of it, but you can read the whole thing for yourself. Is what it talks about is everyone's going to have a digital wallet, okay, and it is going to be maintained by who? Not the central banks, but the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, this is particularly interesting to me because if you've been following along, you'll see that the Fed, in its stimulus programs, which it's running, I think, 7 or 8 simultaneous stimulus programs right now, or vehicles, let's call them. One of them is that they've been buying up, and if you've been following the Zero Hedges and channels like that, you'll know they've been buying up corporate bonds. Okay, so they've been buying up essentially stocks, and they've been buying a lot. And they also own a fair bit of mortgages in the United States. So I find it interesting. While everyone thought, Trump just saved the planet. He just took the Federal Reserve back and gave them no power and gave the power back to the people. Not necessarily, guys. Not necessarily, because the Fed owns a lot now. How is that part of the plan? That doesn't make sense to me. And why would this all be rolled out under the Fed? Okay, the member bank. Look, the term member bank. National State Bank or any bank trust that become a member of one of the Federal Reserve created by the Federal Reserve Act. Digital dollars. Everyone's going to work and operate off of digital dollars. And they're going to all have a digital wallet. Okay. Now, what's interesting about this is it'll be I think they're calling it the Fed asset. I believe that's, okay, I don't know. I believe it's called a Fed asset or a Fed account or something like that. And of course, convenient with COVID, dirty dollars. It's going to pass on the virus, and we got to sanitize the dollars. So let's not even worry about that. Let's just get rid of them, and everything's going to operate the same. You're going to get into your bank account the same way. Wires and the wiring fees will all be the same. They're going to try and make it feel seamless. But on the backside is they're once again sucking out all the principal of what that's worth. It's going to be worth nothing when they're just, okay, here's Tuesday, we're printing our, weekly $200 million. You can't just keep doing that, because in the 70s, it was an asset-backed currency. Up until 71 with the Bretton Woods, when the Bretton Woods model was essentially removed and the gold standard was removed, okay? And so there was an asset-backed currency up until 71. Then after that, it was debt-backed. And now we're so inflated with debt, and there's so much gap and discrepancy, which they want more of this, by the way. They want more of a valuation to earnings multiple, okay? Which this can get pretty large. If you're on the premium newsletter that I put out, I've talked about this in very deep detail, okay? Which, quick plug, is I don't have sponsors on this channel. I just have you guys. If you guys like what you're hearing, if you guys like these videos, all I ask is you share them. If you want to support me in some sort of way, the links in the description are affiliate links, the gear I use, the supplements I take, all kinds of other ways that you can support me if you want to get into these different things. And that helps me, that helps the channel, because I really don't make anything off of YouTube. And they will constantly penalize channels like mine with the view counts and with the ability to even get monetization. So that's how I make money, is through this channel, is by your direct support. So anyways, that's the direction where they want to go, is they want to put us into this digital currency where they can just print as much as they want, which has no value to it. But because they'll make it seem like nothing's changed, we'll just treat it as like, this is the dollar still. That's why they're calling it literally digital dollar. Look at the linguistics, okay? So this has been a long time in the making too, very long time. And again, let's look at some of the coincidences that we're seeing, okay? So everyone hated crypto in 2017. 2020, we've got now Fidelity looking to open up a Bitcoin exclusive fund. We've got basically every hedge fund manager talking about how they love Bitcoin. They think it's great. It's here to stay. Rah, 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 right? And all the crypto kids eat this stuff up and they love it. And they say, oh my God, can you believe that he likes it now? He likes it. We can be friends. I can like him now because he likes the thing I like. It's so stupid. It's all done on purpose. And, we've got people buying this stuff up. We got Grayscale, which is getting bigger and bigger. They're one of the biggest. And now institutional money is here. And it's funny because the side note to that is now Bitcoin follows the S&P quite a bit in terms of behavior. And people don't like that. So it's like you asked for institutional money in 2017. You got it in 2020. Now you're complaining about it. So those are interesting coincidences to me. The other interesting coincidences to me that nobody's talking about, and that's why I felt now is the time to really start having these conversations, is nobody's talking about the DeFi. The DeFi piece that all of a sudden blew up out of nowhere. Uniswaps and all this different stuff. What are we actually talking about? We're talking about adding liquidity to something, in return getting an LP, okay, some sort of loan piece, okay, some sort of monetary thing that's saying, like an IOU, that's saying, okay, you gave us your money, here's your IOU. So these IOU tokens are now very interesting to me because they're being created at mass, these LPs. And they've got like small letters in the beginning or small letters at the end. And these are just like fractional reserve pieces, guys. You're missing the whole boat here. This is fractional reserve banking. So now what we're doing is we went and added liquidity with our Bitcoin. And now they give us junior Bitcoin, let's call it, or SBTC, okay? Now we take our SBTC and we go over here, and this other pooling site will allow me to put in my SBTC into this pool, and I get, a gazillion APR over here. And then they're going to give me an LP token, and I can take that LP token and go over here and put this into this pool, and they're going to pay me a gazillion %. And it's just stacking and stacking and stacking and stacking and stacking. Now this whole thing will collapse, and it will be one of the biggest, it'll make the Bitcoin bubble itself, and the ICO bubble itself, and all the BitConnects and USI Techs and the HIP platforms, it'll make that look like child's play. Because that's the next iteration of what they'll eventually do later. Because in this act right here, they're talking about how it's going to be free. They're not going to charge you, but then you're also going to get interest, and you're going to make money on this. Because you're still ending up with nothing, but they've convinced you that you're getting something. It's really remarkable, actually. Because if the actual spending value, if the actual value of that is lower and lower, then they could pay you 5%, 10%, 20%, 100%, and you're still down. And this is where people start to get really lost. How can you be 100% and still be down? It's how it works. It's how it works in the ones and zeros game of computer technology. And so let's talk about and bring in now a couple other pieces, and I want to wrap this up. And we're going to do another dedicated video on DeFi and fractional reserving and all of this, which is a big experiment, I think, for what they're going to eventually do with all of the state, country, brand-backed digital currencies and how they're going to stack those and get people thinking that they're making all this money. And you know what? Here's the interesting thing. We might actually be making all this money, but it might not matter because the other side has killed us, which is hyperinflation. So let's end it here. Where are we heading? Are we going to inflation first or deflation? I think we haven't even seen the hyperinflation yet. I think we're about to really kick into hyperinflation, even though inflation right now is pretty high. It is above the 2%, which is the Fed mandate. That's all just a gimmick. I think we're about to see the parabolic hyperinflation followed by catastrophic deflation. And a lot of other things are going to happen during that time. We'll talk about in the next video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know this is a bit long. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this has been beneficial, got your brain thinking, got you feeling something different than when you tuned in originally. And if you like this, just show us some support. Click the like, share it with some friends, subscribe to the channel. Most people that view these videos aren't actually subscribed. So subscribe, hit the bell notification. Maybe you'll get it. I don't know. But it shows me support and it shows that, yes, we're going in a positive direction. I like to see that metric. So it would mean a lot to me. If you got something to say, comment below. And you know the deal. Tune in. Be on the lookout for the next video. Thank you.